Hello again and welcome to this video on installing the Cisco Application Policy Infrastructure Controller Enterprise Module, or APIC-EM, with the IWAN app. For those that don't know, APIC-EM is a critical part of Cisco's software-defined architecture. Be it LAN or WAN automation, APIC-EM acts as a centralized controller to orchestrate changes throughout your network. Today, we'll start from the beginning and step you through the installation of APIC-EM in a virtualized or bare metal environment, highlighting some tips you should be aware of. To wrap up, we'll get the IWAN app installed to prep us for some of the videos ahead. To begin with, let's head over to cisco.com and download our software. The base software for APIC-EM comes packaged as an ISO file. In our case, we're downloading version 1.4.1, but the same procedure applies to nearly all versions. Additionally, we need to download the IWAN app. Notice that this software comes packaged as a .application file. We'll see later what to do with this file, but for now, download it to your machine and note where it's located. Also, have a look at the release notes in the installation guide for the version of APIC-EM that you've downloaded to ensure that there are no additional tips that you should be aware of outside of this video. While we're waiting on our files to download, now's a good time to review some checklist items you'll need in order to complete the initial setup of your APIC-EM controller. For single or dual NIC installations, an IP address for each segment may be required, depending on if each NIC will exist in a separate broadcast domain, or if the NICs will be teamed or bonded. More on this later. If you have intentions of deploying more than one APIC-EM in the future, a virtual IP address will be required. Again, more on this later, but as its name implies, the VIP will allow communication with the APIC-EM cluster through a single IP address as opposed to multiple. You'll also need the IP addresses of your DNS servers, as well as NTP servers. Once we have our files, our next step is to either upload the APIC-EM ISO file to our VMware server's data store, or burn the ISO file to a DVD. If you're doing a bare metal install of APIC-EM, you can simply boot to the DVD that you've created and catch back up with us around the 4 minutes and 30 seconds mark in the video. For now, I'm demonstrating the process using VMware. First, navigate to the Storage tab of vSphere and click on the data store that your ESXi host is attached to. Choose the Files tab. From here, upload your ISO image via the Upload File button. Next, our installation guide recommends creating a resource pool to guarantee a minimum allocation of CPU and memory to APIC-EM. Right-click on the ESXi host that will house APIC-EM and choose All vCenter Actions, followed by New Resource Pool. I'll go ahead and fill out this window with the recommended settings. We'll be using a 32GB RAM reservation since this is a lab, but generally speaking, in a non-cluster deployment, 64GB of RAM is recommended. Feel free to pause the video for a closer look. Now we're ready to create our VM. Right-click on your new resource pool and choose New Virtual Machine. In the window that pops up, work your way through the wizard as applicable to your environment. Make sure to set the Guest OS family to Linux and the Guest OS version to Ubuntu Linux 64-bit. In the Customize Hardware screen, choose 6 CPUs, set your memory to either 32 or 64 GB, and set your hard disk to at least 500 GB. Change the SCSI controller to VMware Paravirtual and set your network options appropriately as they apply to your network. Generally, APIC-EM will have a single NIC being placed solely in a DMZ or within an internal network. However, you do have the option of adding a second NIC, either for redundancy or so that APIC-EM can be dual-homed. Dual homing is useful in situations where certain services, such as plug-and-play or certificate authority functionality, need to be externally reachable via the internet, and having one leg of APIC-EM in the DMZ facilitates this. Yet a second NIC resides on the internal network to service internal communications. For the sake of demonstration, we'll go ahead and add the second NIC. Again, feel free to pause the recording and review the settings that I've chosen. Now that our new VM is built, right-click on it and power it on. The software will initiate several self-tests and software unpacking before we're ready to walk through the wizard, so feel free to go grab a drink. If you're doing a bare metal install, this is where you'll want to pick back up with us. The following's been sped up for brevity, but feel free to pause the video for a closer look. First, review and accept the license agreement to proceed. As discussed earlier, if this is your first APIC-EM node, choose Create a new APIC-EM cluster. Enter No to reset this node's network configuration, since this is a fresh install. And enter No to configure NIC teaming as well as VLANs. Configure your APIC EM's IP addressing information. Since our host has 2 NICs, we'll do this twice. Note that, as is typical with any host, only one default gateway is supported. So you'll see me configure a static route on my secondary NIC to work around this. Enter your CCO credentials as well to enable cloud connectivity along with the default credentials for accessing APIC EM. Next, enter your network's NTP information. You'll next be asked about inter-host communications for clusters. Choose whether you want this communication to include IPsec encryption or be cleartext GRE. The default is to use IPsec. Under Cleanup Options, choose the default of No, and you're all set. When your installation finishes, navigate to the IP address you assigned to APIC EM and review the installation. Installing the IWAN app is the easy part. Head over to the cog in the upper right-hand corner and choose App Management. From there, simply drag and drop the IWAN app you downloaded earlier into the window. And that's all there is to it. Once the app is finished installing, be sure to enable it with the toggle switch, and you're ready to begin WAN orchestration. As always, if you have any questions about what you've seen today or have a suggestion for a use case that you'd like to see, feel free to reach out to us at iwanapp-pm@cisco.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.